morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We have several wonderful presenters today, and I'm looking forward to hearing from all of them. But I want to start by talking about obviously what we're all seeing, the hate-fueled terrorist attack by Hamas in Israel over the weekend. And like all of you, I'm sure it's been hard to look away from the terror and the atrocities we've been seeing inflicted on innocent people, whether it's the elderly, the Holocaust survivors, the hundreds of young people who were just celebrating at the music festival, and especially the children, and the continuing nature of the crisis. And the really shock, the terror, the sadness is overwhelming. And I think in some ways akin to 9/11, the attacks, we keep seeing it over and over again. It's just every time you turn on the TV, you see more video, you look at the newspaper, the pictures, you just really can't seem to get away from that. And bearing witness to those terrible acts is really painful. It's really difficult, but it's important not to look away. And I think, and I see some of my partners in law enforcement here today, what is really shocking about some of this is we are usually dealing with perpetrators who are trying to hide their crimes. But these groups are actually proud of what they're doing. And I think that makes it even more important for us not to mince words and to call this what it is. It is terrorism. And, Saturday reflected the largest killing of Jewish people since the Holocaust. And as difficult as that is, I think we have to balance that. We have to stand together, unite as communities. And as we gather today for this meeting, we can't really discount that trauma, the trauma for our friends, both directly and indirectly. I was at a community event last night, and so many people there have children, adult children trapped in Israel. They're studying, they're living there for a period. They really, right now, it's almost impossible to get out. And I think leaving everything else aside as parents, when you think about, as they talked last night, of talking to your child on the phone while hearing the bombs going off in the background, that's a human situation that we can all relate to, no matter what's happening. And I think we also need to remember one of the things we've talked here is about, there is a disinformation campaign as well, and being wary about where we're getting our information and what is the truth, that what can we rely on. And the thing that I'm sure all of you are concerned about is, in the wake of these unprovoked attacks, it's really imperative to think about the potential for other harmful behaviors here. I'm sure many of you have seen the message that Hamas has put out about what they're planning for tomorrow. I know across our communities, so many places are thinking about their security. How will they respond? Do kids go to school tomorrow? It really underscores our duty to prioritize the safety of our communities and to be vocal in the support of others who've been terrorized. And one other piece, and this seems to pale so much in terms of the atrocities that have been committed, but we're already starting to see, as we do after any disaster, people making appeals for help for the people in Israel. So we've already got people getting emails asking for money, allegedly to support people in Israel. And of course, these are people just taking advantage. We heard yesterday about somebody who had already given $16,000 to something that was completely fake. So it seems terrible in the midst of what's happening to think that, people are capitalizing and already entrepreneurial enough that they've set these things up and are looking to do that. But there's the images are so terrible. What's happening is so terrible. People are moved to be helpful and they want to be generous. So we are going to, as I urge everybody to do, we're going to be getting out resources that we know are good resources if people want to give, and hopefully discourage some of the pop-ups on people's computers that they're responding to. And, it makes me think about much of what's happened. When we started this task force, one of the main focuses was how could we build a community where people were not wondering whether they belonged? And how could we ensure that justice and really the unifying spirit of humanity that makes us all recoil when we hear those stories about what happened brings us together? So I've invited today Rabbi Susan Abramson to help us understand and recognize the positive and supportive ways we can be allies to the Jewish community. And I'll introduce her in a bit. But today's meeting, before all of this, our plan is to focus on identity-based bullying, a form of harassment and discrimination that targets individuals for who they are, their personal characteristics, attributes, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religion, disability, or any aspect of their identity. And when they're singled out and mistreated because of who they are, rather than for a specific behavior or action they might have taken, that's when you get to this identity-based bullying. And the harmful effects are significant. And we know they have long-term consequences for people who are the victims of this, especially young people. And we have to come at this problem from a multi-pronged approach. We have to be sure that our laws and our statutes address bullying and harassment in a way that changes over time, that they protect individuals, they create a safe environment, and they really focus on the genuine instances of harmful behavior. You know, I testified yesterday in support of some of our bills on the violation of constitutional rights and hate crimes. And, you know, as is often the case, and any of you who's ever looked at a statute in Massachusetts knows this, statutes often get written in response to something that's happened, and they are written in broad terms, and they sound wonderful, and the people who are writing them think they address the problem. It is in living in the using them, and I know everybody in law enforcement especially knows this, is you have an incident and you try to make the facts of that incident fit into one of the definitions in the statute, or you try to figure out who should be punished in a circumstance. And that's when we really find out that things have been left out, or people didn't realize what the unintended consequence would be. You know, I've talked to this group before about the hate crime in Massachusetts, totally and clearly by accident, says that if your property is vandalized as the result of a hate crime, if you don't own that property, you can't be the victim of the crime. So for instance, if you're a tenant and the house is vandalized, the landlord can be a victim, but the tenant can't. And clearly that's not what anybody meant. And using the term owner of the property, I'm sure no one thought, what's the difference between owning and renting? Same thing, a kid in a college dorm who has terrible things written on their dorm door. They don't own the dorm, so they can't be the named victim of that crime. Those are things that we filed some bills to address. So that means that when we see something that's motivated here by bigotry or racism, we have to start with, we're not going to tolerate that, and then use the statutes we have to make that prosecution possible. And also, a big piece of that is, what do we do when we do hold somebody accountable? You know, right now in Massachusetts, if you are convicted of a hate crime or violation of constitutional rights, part of your sentencing, whatever your sentence is, has to include an education program, a diversity education program. Those programs have been pretty successful. The people who go through those programs, we don't see them again. But that program is not a part of your sentence if you receive a continued without a finding. So lots of times, in an attempt to give somebody, preserve somebody's record, give them a second chance, especially if they're young, and given the wishes often of a victim in a case, we will resolve the case with a continue without a finding. But the judge then does not have to impose that education program. So the education program that we've seen that works, that prevents people from coming back, if you're new to the system and we are trying to help you preserve your record, we don't have to require that you do that. And that obviously just doesn't make any sense. And we don't want a judge to have to convict somebody to impose the program. So this legislation would give them the opportunity, no matter what they do. If they give somebody a continue without a finding or pretrial probation, they can order them to do the education program. Right? We think that's, you know, and I believe very strongly that what changes people from behavior especially people who are newer at doing it and younger, is changing their heart and mind. That's what prevents them from going back and do that. And, the programs like the one we're going to hear from today are critical to making sure that we keep up with the best practices in this field. This is a field that's evolved an enormous amount in the last 10, 15 years. And it's important that we know that we really understand the hate crimes that affect our young people, the bias-based bullying. And far too many of our shootings, we talked about this last night, our mass shootings have been committed by young adults directed at some group. And at a range on a spectrum, that is identity-based bullying. And it comes to a terrible end. We know hate's not a natural trait. It's learned behavior. You get it through socialization, through your personal experience, and you're being exposed to beliefs and attitudes. And if we want that safer future where we're all accepted for who we are, we have to focus on young and not dismiss bullying as a phase. Because if left unchecked, it ends up with things like the supermarket in New York, with so many of those other horrific shootings that we've seen. So this past June, the Massachusetts Interscholastic Association, which is made up of 380 schools across the state, had reported at least 50 incidents of discriminatory behavior that included Black players being taunted with racial slurs, Jewish athletes subjected to anti-Semitic insults and images, and LGBTQ members being harassed. And those are the ones that got reported. And we all know that number is much smaller than what's actually happening. And that's the hope for building those coalitions and helping people think about what it is they're doing. And really the piece that I think that Spark Kindness, our program that we're going to talk about today, is really known for is being incredible partners. Many of you know Chief Hicks, who's the president of the Middlesex Chiefs, the chief in Natick. He is a man of few words. He doesn't send a lot of emails, but he wasn't able to be here this morning, but sent me an email just talking about what wonderful partners he has found Spark Kindness to be, and how, as he said perfectly, they have worked together in helping to make the community better. And that is largely due to the work of our first two speakers. Lynn Canty is the mother of three. She is a lifelong educator, a wife, a mother. She has, over 15 years of experience in the field of education, ranging from being a teacher to a behavior analyst and more. And she's really passionate about issues that relate to social justice, to self-care, to travel. She's a Southern girl by birth, and she's lived in 5 states in the United States, usually along the East Coast, as well as in the United Kingdom for a bit. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's degree in special education, and is a board-certified behavioral analyst. Her partner here, Christine Fortune Guthrie, is an attorney, the mother of 3 children. She as well has that lifelong interest in promoting social justice and inclusion. After earning her JD, she worked briefly as a civil litigator and then for the Circuit Executive's Office of the United States Court of Appeals on the study of gender and racial bias in the courts. Such important work that we've seen a lot of the impact here in Massachusetts. And in 2010, although fortunately none of her 3 children had been bullied, Christine really saw a need for parents and schools to work together to change and encourage a positive school culture, change too. And by 2011, it had grown out of the schools and into the community. And now the organization has grown to over 8,000 members, is working in a number of communities. And her passion is really empowering people at the grassroots level to connect with each other around their core values, despite any differences, to create kindness, inclusion, respect, and really justice for everyone. So it's my great pleasure to welcome them both here. And thank you for telling us about this program.
Thank you so much, District Attorney Ryan. I am Christine Guthrie, the founder and executive director of Spark Kindness. I'm going to begin, and then next, Lynn Canty will be speaking to you all. I'm really honored to be here with you all. I see some familiar faces, Spark, and I really appreciate the words of DA Ryan this morning. There's so much that's going on right now. I don't think there's ever been a more important time to talk about and focus on how we come together to stand up against hate and stand together as a community for the respect and dignity for all people. And as DA Ryan said, my background is both at the grassroots and also in working in institutions. I am the founder of Spark Kindness, but I also have worked even more recently with the federal judiciary. I worked as the director of workplace relations for the First Circuit, which includes all of the courts in Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Puerto Rico, including probation and pretrial services, as well as the federal defender's offices. And in that role, really both of those roles at the grassroots and within the judiciary, the goal has been the same, to build communities where everyone is treated with respect, where people can thrive. And in order to do that, we need to address issues like bullying, discrimination, and hate. And so I'm going to be sharing slides with you in a moment. I also wanted to, here, I'll just bring this up. I also wanted to say that we have been really grateful partners with, to hear that compliment. I think there's no greater compliment than that we are good partners, because it's really the core of our work. And we are lucky that Chief Hicks, we're going to be talking about this anti-bullying coalition, and Chief Hicks wrote one of the letters of collaboration for this grant that is funding this work. We have been working with him for 13 years. So we have a lot of history of partnership. So first, I'm going to be talking to you just a little bit about, DA Ryan did a wonderful job of giving an overview of identity-based bullying. And I have been, like I said, working at the grassroots for 13 years and really started with focusing primarily on bullying prevention. And I have only heard this term more recently. And I think the reason is that there has been obviously an uptick since the pandemic. We have seen increases in bullying and cyberbullying behavior, and you can imagine why. And in addition to that, we've seen the increase in hate speech, hate crimes, et cetera. I think that's brought to the forefront a phenomenon that is going to seem very familiar to most of you, even if you've never heard of this term before. The Department of Justice did a symposium on identity-based bullying it was during the pandemic, so it was online in 2021. We'll be sending all these resources to you, and they have a follow-up next week. And at that conference, they basically said there's really clear research about how harmful identity-based bullying is, and it's not well known. And it hasn't really, the word about this, the word about the impact of it is just beginning to get out. So we feel lucky to be able to talk to you about it today. DA Ryan gave basically the definition of identity-based bullying, which is bullying that's related to our identity, aspects of us that are not changeable. And it has been shown to be particularly harmful for two reasons. One, it has deeper impact, deeper harm than other forms of bullying. And I have to share with you, like I said, my career has been committed to bullying prevention. I believe, and the research reflects, all forms of bullying are harmful. Bullying necessitates, the definition of bullying means that it is intentional harm. There's so much harm in this world that is unintended, but intentional harm is particularly problematic, and bullying involves a power imbalance and abuse of that power. So all bullying is harmful and needs to be addressed. Identity-based bullying is particularly harmful, and that's because it gets to the core aspects of our identity, things that we cannot change. This is particularly harmful to our growing adolescents, so middle schoolers, high schoolers, who are very focused on their identities. When those identities are attacked, it does leave lifelong scars. And the research shows, for example, that physical bullying, for example, is not necessarily correlated to suicidal ideation or death by suicide. However, identity-based bullying is correlated to suicidal ideation and death by suicide. So the depth of the harm, the severity of the harm is greater. In addition, like a hate crime, the harm of identity-based bullying is potentially much broader. It extends beyond the victim to anyone who identifies in the same way or who worries that they might be the next target. It has a terrorizing effect. And this is really one of the ways that this came to my attention, things that have been happening, and DA Ryan alluded to a number of the incidents that have been happening in the Commonwealth. And those things, when we hear about them in the news, if you identify as part of the group that has been targeted by that behavior, you are not only outraged by that behavior, you are terrified. You are scared. It changes how you feel about your children going to school. It has much more of a significant effect. And this is just starting to be studied, that even so they're looking now at, for example, online hate. The children that just observe online hate that it's about their group that they identify with suffer mental health and physical health impacts. So this is just starting to be studied, but but the research on it really shows that it is more harmful in several ways. So before we get to talking more about the Anti-Bullying Coalition and our work, I just wanted to give you a bit of background about Spark and our framework for doing this work. So we are a grassroots organization, and as DA Ryan said, I'm based in Natick, and I founded the organization 13 years ago because there was a pretty huge, involving 125 children, cyberbullying incident at my oldest child, who's now 25, when she was in sixth grade in middle school. And it really seemed to affect the whole community. Even though it was targeted against one child, the whole community seemed to be talking about it. There were lots of rumors and judgment flying around the schools. And this was really at the dawn of cyberbullying and social media. To let you know how long ago it was hip to be on Facebook for middle schoolers. So that was a long time ago. The parents, schools, everyone were at a loss of how to deal with this, really. And so what I have found, and as DA Ryan said, none of my daughter was not affected by it, in that she didn't have a phone, she wasn't on social media. But I saw, as somebody who has really been committed to looking at and addressing social justice, I really saw this as bullying as the right of every human being to be treated with dignity and respect. And I saw the school and the community reeling with this. And what happens, as I know all of you know, when we don't know how to address something, we often start pointing fingers at each other. So there was a lot of that, a lot of pointing fingers at each other. I also witnessed that the schools were taking on a lot of the burden of dealing with this issue, as was the family of the child who'd been targeted. And we really saw very quickly that children are in our community. They're all over our community. They interact with so many members of our community. And therefore, it's really the job of all of us to address bullying, not just the schools, not just the parents of the child. And so we started partnering and creating collaborations with people like the police and school resource officers. I see one of our school resource officers, Beth Heffler, is on this, and she's been a partner from the beginning in this work. But faith leaders, we started forming a coalition 13 years ago. And that work really transformed into Spark. Our mission is, what we saw when we did this work was that every community has silos of wonderful organizations that are doing incredible work in trying to promote respect and dignity for everyone, but they're not necessarily connecting with each other. They're all doing their work in silos. So part of Spark's work is to help build the community-wide partnerships, help us form this web of support. And one of the reasons this is so important is that we know that when something happens in a community, when there's a hate crime, when there's hate speech, if we all come together just at that time, it feels reactive. It doesn't feel responsive. It's really important that we build these coalitions on an ongoing basis. For our work we've received, I've included some of the awards there, and one of them was 10 years ago from the DA's office. More recently, we received an award on suicide prevention work, because all of this obviously is related. In terms of the work that we do, the foundational work, part of our foundational work is really prevention, is building awareness around a lot of these issues, and also just really amplifying the good, promoting pro-social behavior. We have a speaker series that is free and open to everyone. We'll be sharing links in the chat to some of our upcoming programs. But so this speaker series is called the Resilient Community Series. And we try, like I said, make it accessible to all. Everything is free. And some of the programs are online. Some of them are at Natick High School and in other locations. All of them have ASL interpretation simultaneously. And we're trying to have more of them simultaneously interpreted in Spanish and or Portuguese as well. And here are some, this proactive programming is really about building the good. Because what we know about bullying prevention is that people who engage in bullying are the vast minority of people. However, their voices are very loud, and that they can start creating a narrative about a community, about an organization. And so we need to build awareness, and we need to create a larger story of a community about who we, and define who we are as people who stand up for each other. And some of that means addressing some of these issues that really can lead to bullying. So, for example, we did a program recently called Why Will No One Play With Me? The program really is about building social skills from the earliest stages and creating awareness around there are some young people who don't have great social skills, and there's varying reasons for that. And it doesn't mean we should be ostracizing them or othering them. We have a program coming up, we'll share in the chat. We already have 600 people registered for that at Natick High School on adolescent mental health with Lisa D'Amour. She's a national expert. And in addition to programs on kind of building pro-social behavior, we have programs that address bullying directly. So recently we had a program with Dr. Samir Hinduja. He's a national expert on, he runs the Cyberbullying Research Center. He presented at that Department of Justice program on identity-based bullying. He's going to be talking also to our advisory board for our coalition, and we're going to be inviting all of you to join that advisory board if you like, or just join us for our coalition meeting, which Lynn will discuss is going to be in the spring. In addition to programs on bullying and pro-social behavior, we also conduct programs on diversity and inclusion. So again, addressing behaviors that lead to bullying, discrimination, identity-based bullying, hate speech. So programs like this wonderful program from Out Metro West on LGBTQ basics and beyond, how to respond to microaggressions, social justice parenting. We do programs every year with diverse authors because the research shows that really builds empathy in young people about different cultures, different religions, different backgrounds. So that's all of our, and then finally, Kindness Week. Natick, in Natick, we facilitate a community-wide celebration of kindness, and that also happens in Westboro, which is our network partner. And this is, you would think it sounds light and fun, and it is, but Kindness Week is really an opportunity to highlight all of our partners in our community and highlight all the good they are doing, from the police to the Department of Public Works, to the town, to individuals, to children, to schools, faith organizations. Again, it has the effect of drowning out some of the more the hate-filled and divisive rhetoric that we hear, and it also helps to define our community as a community of kindness. Again, we are not at Spark about ignoring, and as DA Ryan said, we need to directly name and address issues of hate and identity-based bullying, but we also can't let them lead and define our communities and the narratives we tell. So Kindness Week is a way for us to help do that. And then finally, one thing that Spark does is, and that's directly related to what we're talking about today, is we have a model, we've created a model for community building, for being good partners to address challenges. And like I said, it's really important to build collaboration and community around these issues, because if we just come together when bad things happen, the research shows, first of all, that can be seen as reactive, and secondly, it often dissipates afterward. And so much of this work, as D.A. Ryan also said, there are limits to the law, and there are limits to what can be criminalized and what can be addressed. And the law is slow to develop often. There's things that can't be necessarily addressed right away, but we can come together right away. We can immediately work at the grassroots. That's the beauty of the grassroots. There's strength in numbers, and we can invite so many different partners. 3 of our core principles at Spark that guide our work in community. First is empowered neutrality. We are active but neutral. We believe we represent the entire community, but that neutrality doesn't mean that we don't take action and we don't stand up for the rights of everybody to be treated with dignity and respect. We believe in collaborating through conflict. We think conflict is actually a good sign, not toxic conflict like bullying or abusive conduct, but conflict that comes up when people who care work together. We believe in harnessing that conflict to work together and to continue to collaborate through it. And we teach and we provide consulting kind of work around that and how to do that. And then the real foundation of all of this is in our title, in our name, Spark Kindness. It's generosity of spirit. We have found that if we give each other the benefit of the doubt, we can do hard things together. And what we're talking about is doing hard things together and addressing really challenging things together. If we are looking at each other and waiting for each other to make mistakes, to say the wrong thing, then it's really hard to make progress together. But if we are in this work together and we are assuming good intent, then we have found that really gives the space to do work together, do amazing work together. This is one of our favorite proverbs. If you want to go fast, go alone. It's African proverb. If you want to go far, go together. This work is about going far together. It might take a little bit more time to collaborate, but it means that we are all going to be invested in it, and it's going to be sustaining. And some of the organizations that we have facilitated and supported the creation of are Natick is United in Natick. We'll share the information about that in the chat. But Natick is United was founded after an alleged hate crime in Natick in 2016, and it is now its own independent 501c3. They conduct ongoing programming, and as they say in their mission here, they're a town-wide network connecting people through advocacy and building a community where we stand together and stand up for each other. We also facilitated the creation of Westboro Connects, another independent 501c3 in Westboro with the mission that you see on the screen, and they're doing incredible work. And now what we're talking to you about today is this Metro West Anti-Bullying Coalition. And really, this coalition, first it came up about reconvening and creating a Metro West anti-bullying coalition because of the increase in bullying that we've seen since the pandemic. Young people, certainly there's been an increase in cyberbullying, and we anticipate increases in bullying, even though young people have been were separated during the pandemic, so we didn't get as much data around that. What we're seeing is the increased stress levels, the decreased social abilities of young people, and the increased time online has led to an uptick in bullying and cyberbullying. But then we also thought this issue of identity-based bullying was a real important reason to convene an anti-bullying coalition throughout Metro West. And it's really, the goal is to address bullying in all of its forms. And, as I said, the mission is about bringing all of, I really like this graphic, bringing all of the pieces of the puzzle together. We all have a role, whether it's Spark or the police or the DA's office or nonprofits. We all have a role in building a safer, more respectful community. And so this coalition is about us all coming together. And Lynn and I are here today. Really, we're at the outset in so many ways of this work on the coalition, and we're also here to learn from you all. One thing that I also wanted to share some of, we've been working through our core values of this coalition. I wanted to highlight a few. We believe in the importance of two simultaneous truths. One is that we need to call out harmful behavior, including identity-based bullying. We have to name its impact. It needs to be condemned. But we can condemn harmful behavior, for example, in young people, but we don't have to condemn individual young people. It's about condemning the behavior, but we need to do that. We can't just say, oh, it was an unfortunate incident. At the same time, we can believe in the power of every young person, every individual to grow, change, and do better. We also wanted to say, even though bullying, and particularly identity-based bullying, can be politicized, but it is not political. It is identity-based bullying, and the right of everybody to be treated with dignity and respect is a human issue, not a political issue. So this coalition that we're building is going to be a community-wide coalition with organizations and people who believe in the right of everybody to be treated with dignity and respect. And finally, I just wanted to touch on trust. There's something particular about identity-based bullying that really means that we need to build trust, because whereas bullying is about abuse of power, abusing power to silence people, identity-based bullying involves silencing people who have already been silenced, marginalizing people who have already been marginalized. And what does that mean? It means we do not know their stories of harm. They are not coming forward to tell us why being treated this way, why a slur being directed at them, how it affected their family, their school, their mental health. So we're beginning this year with inviting partners to this work and gathering stories of impact. And we're really grateful, Lynn will talk about, to the Metro West Health Foundation for funding our ability to do that. And here's just some organizations who've joined us so far. Right now, we are working as an advisory board. The coalition meeting won't be till April, but we invite you. I'm going to turn it over to Lynn now, but we invite any of you to be part of this work. We're going to be having a meeting in November 15th, that Lynn will talk about. So thank you, and we would love to answer questions at any point. And thanks again.
Hi,
I see
everyone.
you're already getting invitations to go to places. Sorry, Lynn, you're already doing it, so that'll be part of it.
I was just going to say there is a question in the chat about coming to individual schools to do presentations. And that is certainly possible. We can, if you just reach out to sparkkindness.org and we can talk about that more. I'm going to share my screen. Please ignore all this junk on my computer. So Christine gave us a really great overview of Spark and all the work Spark has been doing over the last 13 years, which leads us to this Metro West Anti-Bullying Coalition, which, as Christine mentioned, we invite you all to become a part of. Earlier this year, Spark was awarded a grant through the Metro West Health Foundation to delve in even further to this identity-based bullying, hate speech, and online hate. So Spark, in true Spark form, decided to use a community-wide approach and invite all of the puzzle pieces to sit and define the problem of identity-based bullying, define the impact and the harm, engage with our community partners, and draft this awareness campaign. April is going to be the coalition culminating event that we certainly invite everyone to. It's been interesting as we have started this process. As we look at the research and the literature, it's fairly new, this idea of separating out identity-based bullying as something different than bullying, the run-of-the-mill bullying that we all know and are used to hearing. Many of the partners that we have engaged with thus far had not heard of identity-based bullying specifically before engaging with the coalition. So there's definitely a lag in the research, not necessarily the research, but the practice of that research or the interpretation of that research. So I came across a very interesting statistic that I'll share. From research to practice, there's generally a lag of about 6 to 17 years. So from the time our wonderful, lovely researchers do their thing and dive into an issue and learn all about it and the impact and the harm, it takes about 6 to 17 years for us, boots on the ground, to then take that information and do something about it. So I think it makes the work of this coalition that much more important. We see some of the statistics. Cyberbullying victimization increased to 22% in 2021. 23% of bullying incidents were based on race. And the impact, so it was based on race. That seems like a generic statistic, but when you think about the long-term impact of the harm that is caused by these incidents, you start to see that reflected in our mental health statistics and our kids who are really struggling. The impact and the harm, it is very far reaching. It impacts kids behaviorally, emotionally, academically, physically, and it manifests by way of depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, and self-harm. So all of the research is there. And this coalition has convened to, again, name this impact and harm and define identity-based bullying and why it should be given its own category outside of regular run-of-the-mill bullying. So we had our first meeting in August 17th. We convened the advisory board. We have over 40 community partners that are engaging with us in this work. The other thing we've done is we've held listening sessions. Just over half of the partners engaged in this work with us participating in a listening session where we sat together in a smaller group to just get an idea of how our different partners are impacted, how identity-based bullying impacts them in their work, and how it manifests in what they do on a day-to-day basis. It has been very enlightening to hear firsthand how the different organizations, from faith-based leaders to the resource officers to other nonprofits, are being impacted by identity-based bullying, and the type of support they are seeing is needed in this work. We have our second meeting coming up on November 15th, where we will have speaker Samir Hinduja over the Cyberbullying Institute speak to us more about identity-based bullying in addition to cyberbullying. January, we will have our last advisory board meeting before our April coalition event, which we will talk about all of the information we have gathered throughout these meetings. Everyone's invited, if I haven't already said that. Come join us. So Spark really took and always takes the community approach because, again, we're all different pieces to this puzzle. So we are establishing the foundational understanding of what identity-based bullying is. We're collaborating to find out the impact in our different community partners and what they're seeing on the ground in their areas. The other big part of this is we're collecting stories. We're collecting stories of how identity-based bullying has impacted and harmed those in marginalized communities that are typically the victims of identity-based bullying. This is going to be a very important event. So if any of you have stories or specific experience in this area that you'd be willing to share, please reach out. Please let us know. The culminating event in April, that is going to kind of close out year one of this grant as we look ahead and start planning for year two and thinking about and pulling together resources and trying to equip our communities and community members and partners with ways to handle and deal with identity bullying. Again, we are not trying to go fast alone. We're trying to go far together. So we're taking our time to really name it and understand the impact and the harm. As was mentioned, there are some upcoming events that are sure to be really, really full of information. 2 years ago, the Juvenile Justice Department had a 2-day symposium that focused a lot on identity-based bullying. That's coming up again next week. I believe it's next Tuesday and Wednesday. It's about 5 hours. I believe it's 12 to 5 Tuesday, 12 to 5 on Wednesday. That's going to focus again on identity-based bullying, hate crimes, hate speech, and all of that. Spark is hosting Lisa D'Amour next Wednesday in person in Natick. The Emotional Lives of Teenagers, an amazing book. It really gives a lot of insight into our kiddos at that developmental stage and a lot of the things they're going through and ways to help and support them. And on November 5th, we will have Samir Hinduja with the Cyberbullying Research Center, and we will make sure you have all this information and ways to register if you're interested in attending. That's Samir Hinduja. And now, if there's any questions, we're happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Questions, comments?
I have a quick question. This work is fantastic, and I'm just wondering, is it a goal or a possibility of how do we do this on the adult level? Like a lot of times when we see incident reports, it doesn't rise to the level of perhaps prosecuting cases, but we definitely do see adults participating in identity-based bullying. And I'm just wondering, at some point, is there a discussion of maybe making it, I see that we did it in Natick and doing that community building, but is part of it either specifically working with parents or young adults or different organizations that perhaps law enforcement can kind of push in on that to deal with some of these like community disputes?
I think it's a great question. And I think, with bullying, often we think about kids and we focus on young people. But what we know is true is that bullying affects people across their lifespan. Bullying can happen at any age. And even when we're talking about bullying with young people, it's really important to build awareness in the adults in their lives. And so really our approach has been much more adult focused, parent, caregiver, community member focused. We do partner with initiatives in the schools that are peer leadership programs, and there is great work being done at that level. And one of the things about identity-based bullying that was kind of blew my mind when I started reading the research is that we often think about bullying as antisocial behavior, and we think about it as individual behavior. And certainly, it can be antisocial, but often it's done to elevate our social status. That's true for young people and older people as well. And it is individual in that we have to address each issue at a time, and each instance is unique. But bullying is also systemic. So the ways in which young people bully each other in schools are often reflect the larger systemic issues. So who is being targeted? Who has less power in a school? That is connected to power and bias and discrimination in the larger community. So if we don't address this among the adults in the community, we're not getting to the heart of a lot of this. So I think that's one of the reasons our series used to be called Resilient Parent, Resilient Child. And so a lot of this is really about how do we promote those two things, awareness, kindness, and then also resilience among in the whole community. But we've found talking to the adults really has an impact.
And to be fair, a lot of what is going on in the quote unquote adult world or the community at large, what we see at the school level is that bleeding through to the school level. So it's definitely a reflection of what's going on elsewhere in their home life, in the conversations parents are having, those experiences.
I wanted also share, somebody messaged me about if they being interested in joining the coalition. If you're interested in joining the advisory board or the coalition, you can register for the Samir Hinduja program on the 15th. If you can't make it to that, that's fine as well. You can just send an email to Lynn or myself, And we will send you the information and sign you up to be part of the advisory board. Or you can just let us know, I would like to be part of the coalition event in April. The advisory board, we didn't want to create this coalition event in a vacuum. We really wanted to listen to our community partners, listen to everybody who's been impacted, and build this event together. And we really, it's a great group. We welcome you to enjoy. There's only 2 more meetings left of the advisory board, this one in November with Dr. Hinduja, and then there'll be one in January as well. So we invite you to be part of either, and you can just reach out to Lynn or myself about that.
Anybody else? Lynn, Christine, thank you. You lived
you
up,
for having
you
us.
lived up to Chief Hicks's prediction. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce my good friend, Rabbi Susan Abramson, the rabbi of Temple Shalom Ameth in Burlington, who came on short notice, as she always does, to talk to us a little bit. And I so appreciate your carving time out of both what is a emotionally difficult time, and also, I'm sure, because I know Rabbi Susan well, she's probably been on the phone with Israel half the night. So I appreciate you doing this. To really talk a little bit about how we can stand up for the people suffering this terror and really be supportive allies. And let me tell you a little bit about Rabbi Abramson. She received her bachelor's degree from Brandeis and was ordained at Hebrew Union College, the Jewish Institute of Religion, in 1981. In 2006, she received a Doctor of Divinity degree from Hebrew Union, and she served as an assistant rabbi of a mainline Reform temple in Woodwood, Pennsylvania, from 1981 to 1984. She is the co-founder of the Stars of David, a social support group for Jewish and partly Jewish families who have adopted children. She has served on the executive board of the Central Conference of American Rabbis, the Action for Post-Soviet Jewry, and she is the Northeast chairperson for the Women's Rabbinical Network. She's also the author of several children's books. And most importantly, I think for me, for Scott Jones, who's here, Rabbi Abramson, I first met when she came to help us with a really terrible situation that had happened in the community. And just like being here today on short notice, really quickly, had a whole bunch of people in her house, and we were talking and we were working things out and really coming together. And those bonds have only grown stronger over the years. I've been so many times a guest at the temple on happy occasions and very sad occasions. She's a true partner, and really somebody who is focused on the humanity of people and on justice in the world. And we're just very fortunate to have her here in this county, and incredibly fortunate to have her here this morning. So thank you.
Well, thank you, DA Ryan. and I'm incredibly honored to have you as a friend. And I can't think of a better friend to the Jewish community than you. You've been there for us every single time there's been a situation, and as you said, in both good times and bad. And we've sat together at many Passover Seders, and you very generously agreed to participate and put yourself on the line in our little Passover skits, dressing as, who were you this last time? I forget, God or Miriam or somebody. Anyway, I couldn't have a better friend than you, and you're really one of my heroes in everything that you do for the county and for all of us. So thank you even for just creating this gathering. And Scott Jones, also, I just wanted to say that you're also a wonderful, tremendous friend in the police department in Bedford, and very, very lucky to have you. So I usually would turn my phone off for this on mute, but it's on because I have a little app on my phone now called Red Alert, which tells me, which dings every time a missile is being fired at any place in the state of Israel. And it's been, I woke up this morning thinking that hopefully it's not going to go off today. And during the previous presentations, it's gone off about 25 times with barrages of missiles, both in the south, very south, and the north. In Israel, like basically no place in Israel is safe right now. Like there's no safe place. Israel's, as you know, a very small country, and people have been evacuated from the north and the south. Rockets are being launched from Lebanon and Syria, as well as Gaza, and I just can't tell you how sick I am right now. Jews are like one extended family, and when one person is killed or injured, we all mourn. So this is just beyond our comprehension to wrap our hearts and our minds around, and it's so very difficult. And in addition to Hamas coming in and systematically killing, going from house to house, literally in the southern kibbutzim, not far from the border, literally going from house to house and killing everybody inside, and just children's houses, and systematically killing children, taking hundreds of hostages, and defaming them, and treating them as subhuman. There are certain resonances of the Holocaust. It's not the same thing, but it's something very different. But the trauma and the inhumanity is the same. And then it also makes me sick to my stomach to think about all the innocent people in Gaza who are going to die because of this situation. And last night we had a spontaneous time for reflection in my congregation, and 30 people showed up, and one person said, like, how do we distinguish an innocent Palestinian person from somebody who has terror in their hearts and wants to destroy us? And I thought that was a wonderful, horrible question. And last night also, we've temple members from Israel, and they said they were at services last week, and when I read the names of those in the Kaddish, the people who had died, they said they were so fortunate not to know anybody who had died in their family. And last night she sent me a text and said, now I feel like I'm mourning 1,200 brothers and sisters. So it's a very, very emotional, difficult time for the Jewish community. And there have been many wonderful friends who have reached out to us in support, and every single one of those people is greatly appreciated. That's the best thing you can do for your Jewish friends, is just to give them a call and say, like, just sending you thoughts and prayers and comfort and compassion. It's very, very meaningful. It's not a time for a political discussion. It's not a time to discuss like who caused this, or blaming anybody. It's a time for compassion. And I've been working with school systems and trying to parse this out for people, and some people have been more understanding, some people have been less understanding, and I'm currently engaged in discussions with some school systems where there were 7 Jewish kids at the temple last night from different school systems, and some of them said they feel completely isolated and alone. Nobody cares. The school hasn't said a word. They feel like they're all by themselves, having to deal with this trauma. And it seems like not only does nobody care, but kids unwittingly say things in both directions, and so that's doubly troubling. So, and the last thing I just wanted to say, and then I'll ask if anybody wants to respond in any way, is that one of the school districts I'm dealing with, like they have a diversity person, and we had long discussions over the summer about how diversity is so important, and we need to blah 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 blah. Since this has occurred, there's been radio silence from the same person, who's supposed to be the diversity overseeing diversity in the school system. So it's one thing to talk about diversity. It's another thing to actually jump, when there's a need for support for a diverse community. So talk is very cheap, and it's actions speak louder than words, and that's what we need right now is action more than trying to say the right thing to a community. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Rabbi. Anybody have any questions, comments? Questions about how to be good allies, how to be supportive? Yes, Scott.
Yeah, thank you, DA Ryan, and then thank you, Rabbi Abramson. Again, getting people together is these partnerships that really matter to our communities, and I cannot thank the two of you enough for your partnership over the years, and for bringing us together to discuss these very difficult issues. I know in Bedford, we try to have this organization where we meet, semi-annually, and I think it's very important, and it reflects the diversity of the community, but we get to hear the varied voices and what's happening in the community. And again, Rabbi, you've been a good friend and a partner over the years, and we hope we continue to have your support, and that that you have ours. Thank you.
Yeah, and I have to say that the first time I met the DA was in my family room. She and her son came when there were a whole series of anti-Semitic incidents in Bedford, and I didn't know anybody in town, or certainly her or anybody, and the chief said, "I want to invite all the Jewish families in town to come to your house along with the DA to talk about how the Jewish community is feeling in regards as a result of these incidents." And that's a night I will never ever forget. So since that day, I've just been so grateful to the DA and to the Bedford Police Department. They've been wonderful, wonderful partners, as has the school system. So thank you.
And Rabbi, I don't know if you were on earlier, and I'm going to be at the temple tomorrow, and I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that. But in what seems to so pale in comparison to the atrocities, but is clearly a pretty realistic impact for some people, we are already starting to see the entrepreneurs who are taking advantage of the generosity people have towards Israel right now, in the scams. So we learned about somebody who gave $16,000 yesterday to something that is not going to be going to help Israel. So we're going to put out a little bit, sort of some tips, places people can donate if they are moved to donate, where they can legitimately donate. Because I think everybody sees it, or you see kids, or you see whatever, and you just want to give. And these guys are way too happy to be online asking you for money.
Thank you. Thank you. I also wanted to add that I was recently informed that tomorrow there was a call for a jihad against Jews and non-Jews alike around the world. So the Burlington Police Department already has a police car parked in front of the temple, which will be there for the foreseeable future, and they're going to have additional patrols tomorrow. And we're having a service of solidarity tomorrow night at the temple, and the DA will be there, and you're all invited to join us as well. We have a number of interfaith clergy coming, so just this jihad, it's just like, this thing has legs like crazy, and the other thing I just wanted to mention is usually I go to Facebook as like a safe haven to just unwind and just like think about something else, but now Facebook is one of the worst places for me to be, because there's post after post after post of these beautiful young people who have just been killed, like children who are missing, I I can't even go there anymore. It's become like the worst place to be as opposed to like a place of consolation. So anyway, two more other thoughts.
It's
And the rabbi, if you haven't seen it, there is that thread out there. And like the rabbi, I've been monitoring my phone because everybody's meeting today, the US attorney, the state police, the fusion center. There is right now nothing more credible than that. What is concerning is apparently Friday the 13th has some significance to Hamas. So that is concerning. So no one is discounting this, although we have no reason to be at a panic state. Nobody is discounting the threat that's out there, and people are taking all the appropriate measures across the county.
Yeah, and I also just, and then I'll be quiet, but this morning we had a Temple family email us and ask if we felt we were going to have adequate security for them to be able to come bring their children to religious school on Sunday. So our community is very, very scared. Like we this because of the rise in anti-Semitism before this, people were worried already. You know, like there's been a sharp rise in anti-Semitism over the past few years, but this has just like, you know, and every time there's like a jihad like call for or anything, it pushes everybody way over the border into total paranoia. So everybody's in a state of just total fear and anxiety right now, not only for our brothers and sisters in Israel and our friends in Gaza, but also our own personal community.
Can I just add a quick question or request or any kind of help that we can receive? And just, you know, as working for the government, I work for a regional planning agency, Metropolitan Area Planning Council. We do a lot of, you know, equity work and racial equity work. And when it comes to religion, and I know Judaism and Jewish people can be, you know, it's essentially, I would assume, an ethno religion that, you know, we get a little bit log jammed, despite the fact that, you know, things that affect the Jewish community are things that, you know, we really need to be, you know, good allies and strong allies on. You know, when the Tree of Life murders happened, which is a horrific thing, I felt like we froze up even talking about it because of just the horror of such a thing tends to make us all want to go into our shells. And B, I think, you know, it's just something that as a government entity, the concept of religion is something that we try to tiptoe around. It's not something that we involve ourselves in, but it's again something that I think is a very necessary place for us to like you mentioned earlier, to check in with our you know, our Jewish friends and to be there for them, and any kind of resources or just, you know, ways for us to tackle that would be really helpful.
Okay, yeah, I mean, Judaism, it's not just a religion, it's like, you know, it's a peoplehood also. So and that, you know, is like I know a little bit of a different concept for people in other faiths. Like it's not a faith, it's a, you know, it's a faith and a people and a history and a heritage and a, you know, tradition, and it's all that wound up into one. So that I think makes it a little bit unique among the faith communities, and lots of people who are like partly Jewish or you know, don't belong to a synagogue or have much of a Jewish identity, like you know, we shouldn't kid ourselves, those people are suffering now also, because it every time something like this happens, it raises everybody's level of Jewish connection way higher than it might have been before. I think we've been lulled into, in our country, we've been lulled into a sense of acceptance, and we don't have to be Jewish, you know, to be American. And so people have kind of adopted like an American identity, and their Judaism has been suppressed a lot of times. But when these things happen, it pops right back up again. So even those who you might think, oh, they're not really practicing Jews or whatever, they still, I think just you know, the verbal communication with them and just showing that you care is by far the best thing that anybody can do, and not take that for granted.
Yes. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, as always, for coming and helping us and putting some perspective on what's going on. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
so
I'll see
much.
you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Just a couple of notes of other instances and things that have happened. As many of you may have seen, the Armenian Apostolic Church, St. Stephen's in Watertown, was the victim of some hateful graffiti that was posted on their bulletin board at the front of the church. Police were able to collect some video, but have not yet been able to identify a suspect from that video. They are trying to do that as well as provide some extra patrols and securities there. The hope is obviously that was some isolated incident. There's been nothing since then. Yesterday, I believe it was, police in Holliston began an investigation after they found swastikas on small stamp-sized pieces of paper on the sports field near two of the elementary schools and the middle schools. There's been a condemnation clearly by the town, but very unsettling, just, incredibly unsettling to send your children to those schools when you know someone who, kind of goes to that identity bullying. I mean, they are coming at people because of who they are. So that's been a very difficult situation. And then also, you may have seen just a week and a half or so ago, we resolved a case where a woman was accused of racially harassing Melrose City Councilor and her husband and young child, who are Muslim. She both verbally harassed them and then assaulted the husband at a gas station about 9 months ago. She was convicted and placed on 6 months probation and ordered to take, as I mentioned earlier, that diversity course. She was ordered to take a course on anti-Islamophobia. So that continues to be the work that we are doing. We will meet again on November 9th at 10. And if there's anything else that people have concerns about, obviously we'll monitor the situation, be ready to respond with any changes or things that have happened either here or around the world, around what's happening in Israel, and as well as instances that happen in our community. So anybody have any last questions, comments, things you want to promote or put out there?
Can I just ask, I had a meeting with a group of rabbis yesterday, and I asked them if anybody had heard anything from the Muslim communities in the area, and no one had. So I think it's so important that we reach out, that we communicate with the Muslim community, but there's been silence, and I'm just not sure how to deal with that. I mean, we're very good friends with the Islamic Center down the street from the temple. I've been there a million times. I just haven't heard a word. So that I feel like that's a complicating issue right now.
Well, I agree, Rabbi. We reached out to the mosque in Sudbury, Wayland, which we have a very good relationship with. Now, it was later in the afternoon, but we still haven't heard anything back. So, and I think I was talking last night about, as many of you know, I'm a big supporter personally, and we are supporters in this office of restorative justice. Because I think as much as we legislate and as much as we do other things, what changes people's hearts is being with people who are different, seeing how they live, talking about it, what is the impact of things. And I was talking last night about the fact that about 5 or 6 years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Israel when I first became the DA. And I think if I'd ever questioned whether that was true, I know certainly watching on Saturday, my reaction was just so much more visceral because I'd stood in those places. I talked to people there. I had seen, as many of you may know, and obviously the rabbi knows so well, and in Israel, it is not the custom to have a moment of silence when someone passes, but the sirens wail, and we were on the way to the airport and the sirens had gone off in they were having a memorial for something that had happened. And people literally get out of their car and stand by their car. And that has not been able to happen in Israel yet because this is so ongoing and they haven't been able to really count the dead or to begin that mourning or funeral process. And you just see how, having talked to those people, we were at so many of the places that have actually suffered terrible, terrible damage. I do believe that is where the change in the world comes from, is bringing people together, letting them learn about other people. Whatever anybody thinks, I think changes when you see the humanity of the person across the table from you, or that you're having a meal with, or that sort of thing. And that's really my mission here, is to try to make this personal, to try to make those connections so that people's hearts and minds are really changed. I always liken it to when we used to just do prosecution in these cases. I always liken it to kind of Charlie Brown, where you hear that wonk, wonk, wonk adult voice. The court can only do so much. It is people being allies and coming together and talking and engaging that is going to lead us, I think, to a more peaceful world. So I thank you all for being here. I especially thank our speakers for helping us so much this morning, and please be safe. Take care. Thank you. Thanks, Antonia.